So this lesson is on data validation. So it allows you to control the input you receive from others and keep your spreadsheet clean. An example is you can create a drop-down that only accepts yes or no as values and not maybe or it depends, so you don't get a bunch of garbage back if someone was to update your spreadsheet. Now we're in our Customers tab of our sample file, and what we want to do is create a drop-down for the gender field. Because right now somebody could insert uppercase M, lowercase m, they could type male in all caps, or they could type male, I think. Lots of different things that people could type, and we don't want that. We want to keep our data clean, which really helps us later when we try to report on it. So what we could do is to set up the data validation is we could select the cells that have a gender in it currently. But the problem is if we just selected those cells, if we were to create a new customer row after that, for example, in row 153, that data validation wouldn't be there because we hadn't selected that cell originally. So what we're going to do is go ahead and select all of column C. And you can see that gender, the header cell is included for now. But I wouldn't worry about that. We'll fix that later. Most important thing is that we get all of the subsequent cells down below fixed. So under the Data tab, we can click on Data Validation to set up our validation, and a pop-up window will appear. And we'll see our validation criteria up front. And we can, in the Allow drop-down, we have a few different options. In this case, we want to use the list. And in our source text box, one option is that we can type male, female. We can hand type that in there. That's okay. There's nothing really wrong with that. Another option is that we could delete that and select the button right next to that text box. What that's going to allow us to do is to source our list from somewhere else in our spreadsheet. So if we go to the Other tab, you'll see that I've set up a small list for gender. So what you don't want to do is select gender and then male and female, because gender would appear in your drop-down. You just want to select male and female. Now you can click that little button to get you back, and then click OK, and you should now see that drop-down appear. So if I select on one of those gender cells, I could use that drop-down to make sure that people keep my data clean. And just as a test here, maybe what we'll do is we'll enter a capital M and then try to hit enter and see what happens. So we get an error message. It's saying that the value we entered is not valid. So we'll close out of that, and you can see that they're going to be forced to enter an option from the drop-down menu. Okay, so let's make a change to the drop-down. We're going to select our entire column again, and we can also add, to customize it, an input message. So when someone selects a gender cell, they'll see this input message. So we might say, please select an option from the drop-down. And then we could also add an error alert. So we saw that error earlier when we tried to type that capital M. We can actually customize that message so it's more useful for folks who are entering data in. So we might say something like the gender format is incorrect. Please select an option from the drop-down. And so if they didn't, they would get that error message. Okay, so we select a gender cell, and now we see that input message. Please select an option from the drop-down. And it's just, certainly that's not required. It's just, might make it more useful for folks entering your data. Okay, so we entered an M, and we tried to hit enter, and we see our error message that we've created. Gender format is incorrect. Okay, now what we want to do is fix the gender cell. We don't want that validation to appear. So what we can do is go back up to the Data Validation tab, and we've just selected that header cell. We can then click Clear All, and that'll remove any data validation, any input message, any error alerts that we had for that particular cell. So you can see I've selected that gender cell, and it doesn't have the input message like the next cell does. Now what I want to do now is show you other things that you can validate. I know drop-down might be the thing that you'd most frequently use, but let's try a few other things. And I'm just going to highlight the cells that I want to add some different validation too. So we've gone back to the data validation menu, and we'll change our criteria. And so there's a few different options. We can set whole numbers, decimals, we use lists. We can also dictate dates, times, and text lengths. So text length is the number of characters that someone can insert into a cell. So let's try whole number. So let's say our criteria is going to be that the whole number, it has to be a whole number where the minimum is 1 and the maximum is 10. So we'll select OK. And then if we try to insert 11, we'll get an error message, right? Because that doesn't meet the criteria that we've set. We'll select all of our highlighted cells again. And then let's change it to, we could change it to decimal. But let's try something else. Let's try text length. So we'll set the minimum as 1. And then we'll change the maximum to 5. So they can only enter between 1 and 5 characters in one of those cells. So we'll just test it here. And we get the error message. So if you want to, avoid having people enter long text strings into your cells, this is a great way to prevent that. So data validation, just as a summary, a really useful way to make sure your data stays clean. And that becomes really important if you try to report on this later and run pivot tables against it. It'll keep that data good.